This video is going to be partially tongue-in-cheek, and I'm going to cover a serious subject at the end. Paul Harrell had an older YouTube channel. The channel's named Very Low Budget, and it was put together for a project, we're going to call it, he did. This started 2008 and so forth, called DCS, Disaster Contingency Specialists, a one-page, one-man mostly website and a domain name that eventually expired in 2013, apparently. This was brought on by several things, maybe the timing, maybe what people were discussing, maybe questions he was being asked. This is specifically one thing he cited. After a real-world experience in New Orleans during and after Katrina, while with or helping out with the National Guard, and an incident where he had to defend his family, and then dealing with the legal system afterwards, he and some friends decided to offer help and services, but they had, rates they were posting. Now, this is a one-pager. Let's get this out of the way. It's a website that is made in what I refer to as the efficient and honest way. Instead of making a page look impressive by having lots and lots of things on the menu that all just link to things you could put on one page, he and his friends, he even mentioned this is in some of his recent, YouTube videos. It'll say edited by or uploaded by such and such. At the time, he ran this through WordPress, he or somebody else, and they made a one-pager. What that means is at the top you have a menu of the things you probably are looking for, or most likely looking for, and then it'd have a separate paragraph for it, and maybe some pictures, and just flat out didn't try to look impressive by being big. It made it a fast-loading, efficient, simple page that answered your questions. That's what it should be. Later on, it split them off into extra pages because there was more content, or it was specifically separate subjects people were looking into, and also so that he could put punchlines to some of his dry humor somewhere because he apparently didn't yuck it up enough and had to actually explain, no, that was a joke. But anyway, here we go. Home presentations, going to someone's house, traveling time, whatever, for helping people learn about preparedness and, how to set up a plan. $400. That's not ridiculously expensive for not really stating what the range is. All of these are negotiable at the time. A 5-hour seminar for $175 per couple and $100 per person, lunch provided. One-on-one instruction for $25 an hour plus the cost of ammo if you want to learn about weapons. 6-hour classroom and range training day, all day, $100 plus ammo cost. All of this provided an opportunity to learn basic shooting skills, if it was involving it, helping you make informed decisions while firing about 15 models of firearms, representing the most popular types of handguns, rifles, and shotguns in the market. That's about 5 each, but they can overlap, obviously, depending on what you're looking at. Now, why would he do this? Frustration with stupid people is what it looks like. This is an opinion. This page is gone, obviously. I've got archive.orgs and archive.is is below. Citing the Great Depression, Hurricane Katrina, Chilean earthquake, and Mount St. Helens eruptions that all really did happen. This was very important for him to emphasize the real from the not real. Can you keep yourself and your family housed, fed, and safe if it happens again? Do you have a plan? Readiness today means no regret tomorrow. The more people that are ready for a bad situation, the fewer are running around in a panic, and the less need there is for a government to come in and gum up the works by trying to help, or having to acknowledge that they can't because some things are even too big for the government to take care of. Logistically speaking, you can have a disaster like Katrina or anything you can imagine or have experienced in your lifespan, particularly shitty set of decades, so you'll all have a reference point, where the government really wouldn't be able to do anything because there wasn't anything that could be done. But the individuals stuck in a situation, this is me interjecting, are sometimes the only ones to get themselves out. It's trivial to airlift a person out of the desert, but if you don't know they're there, you can't airlift them. And how do you get yourself out? Well, best thing is to not get in that situation, but let's continue. Earthquakes, tsunami, obviously referring to a recent incident. Devastating storms, volcanic eruption, St. Helens. Oil shortages. Yes, he said peak oil was real. Financial collapse. Always a problem and always a threat. We're in a capitalist system. It's not perfectly stable, and that does happen occasionally, and has. He specified, the Great Depression. Mass panic. This one is emphasis added. At DCS, we give you the facts, not the hype, and help you separate reality from fiction. What of Mayan doomsday prophecies for 2012? What of Planet X? And the end of the world as we know it? Are the consequences real? Some say yes, some say no. I don't know for sure. Does anyone? Well, there's no Planet X. An extinction asteroid may happen every 60 million years or more. That's me synopsizing an entire paragraph. You have nothing to fear from zombies. There is no doubt, however, that the end of the axial rotation cycle is real. Since the axial rotation cycle is just the cycle of day and night, but there will be a tomorrow. I'm adding that in. He didn't leave the definition there and eventually just removed it because people thought he was talking about something else. He found a literate wording for there will be another day. Now I want to point out a couple of things. From 2008 to 2011, nobody archived the page. It got archived by somebody about 2011, early. Late 2011, there were other archives, and then the main one that I have a link to ends in QEU17 scenarios, which omitted some of the dumber things here. At first blush, you could decide that you're looking at someone who's playing up fears, but then the punchline, if you read it, is no. Eventually made it clear by putting them all on separate pages and doing individual assertion, question, rebuttal. Some of them, however, have no rebuttal, and they're quite useful in that scenario one that ends in EU17. I recommend that. That's just the archive of it that I made today. Next, he's notorious, absolutely notorious, for using very literate communication skills, speech, not talking down to people, but sometimes hiding a joke about someone being stupid in a way that would force them to actually look something up, like looking up ad astra versus what you might think that means. It means to the stars, or to the moon, Alice. Ad luna, I guess. But his old, very low-budget YouTube user channel, I finally found it. Yay! Next thing is the disaster contingency specialist notations that used to be in the videos and is still in some of them visually, leading to that domain name when you look it up. It's been gone for many years. And even then you can see classic Paul Harrell dry humor and, more importantly, realism. And I think this is the part that gets to people most about his channel. He'll point out, I don't like this, I don't think it works this way, but we're going to check it. And by the end of the video, he realizes, no, I was wrong about this, and that's it. I mean, it's just cut and dry. He's not afraid to let reality beat him over the head and teach him a lesson. And I think that's what happened up to this point. And probably much before it. Now, a little warning. If anybody wants to look up what he was referring to there, then I'm not going to point out, but him having an incident involving the law, it is legitimately a situation none of you would want to be into. I do not want to belabor it. And it's a stereotypical situation that is the worst thing that can happen to you because you can never understand why it happened or what the motivation was for it happening, and you were not given a choice. And this is the one thing he does not discuss very much. He mostly talks about if you have to defend yourself, or if you're going hunting, or if you're just shooting targets. And then if he deals with self-defense situations, he talks about the practicality of it, and does not decide, and overtly says, I'm not going to judge or even presume to judge what should be or should not be there. He really means it when he says, this is an opinion, or this is what I can determine, or this is what I can show you right here in the video, and what you do, or he does, or I do, or thinks, feels, and thinks. None of this has to relate to each other. We can only share information and try to make the world a better place for all of us, if possible. Now I'm going to get to a rant. By the way, I lived in the same area he hangs out most in, Eastern Oregon, at one time. And when I was there, I was referred to as a mandatory part of the safety kit, the basic equipment list guy. I got all sorts of silly names because it didn't matter if people liked me, I was necessary. I was told that a lot. That's not, in my opinion, accurate. But they would tell me that. I lived in an area that was a first or second strike designated location due to a military ammo dump type depot that contain nerve gas. So we were designated first or second strike. That means 15-minute delay from when we know we're going to be hit, or 20-minute. And we were not designated to be informed of this because there was no point, because the only thing that would happen is that the officials in the area would be told, just evacuate. Don't tell people why. Just tell them to evacuate the area away from anything that could be a problem. That meant everybody should have a map and a bunch of arrows drawn on it immediately. And I was one of the many people who made sure that everybody every year had their fucking map and spent any day, not the same day, any day to figure out the cleanest path that way. And once a month or once a week, check to see if the pathway is still clear. And if it's not clear, find another pathway. Don't stress it. But once a week or once a month, depending on what you feel comfortable with, most people didn't do it after a while, find a pathway to go the straightest route away from whatever the target is and any other threats. Get away from low ground, so you're at high ground. If it's a threat to that army depot, get to low ground behind high ground. Combine the two if you can. Make sure it's an area that can't be exposed to flood. Make sure it's an area that's not subject to fire, because that's a disaster scenario. And because of Mount St. Helens, make sure it's an area that's not near any fault lines. We had to add the fault line maps. I'm quite educated on it, let's say. But I don't take myself seriously about any of it, because there's no point in doing so. It's not relevant. 99% of the time you're not dealing with this, until you are. And if anybody hasn't noticed it, we're now at the tail end of it, let's just say it, of a disaster, a worldwide disaster. And in the United States, we lost over 500,000 people. And saying that in that short sentence should be terrifying to you, because of you all saw what happened. Don't say what you saw. Every one of you is going to try to rationalize it, or try to say it isn't so, or say something even worse happened. No, the reality. Say it in your head, not out loud, because then you won't lie to yourself, maybe. And you all learned what I'm going to explain to you now. Number one, it is in your best interest to make sure that everyone's best interest is taken care of. Survivalist, aka, I used to be called a survivalist or a prepper. I don't know if that wording would work anymore, because those words are synonymous now with a guy next door who says, if you knock on my door and when shit hits the fan, I'll just shoot you through the door. That's great. You just blown a hole in your door. You made everybody in the neighborhood know that you're a threat. And now they have an absolute reason to make sure you're no longer a threat. I had to explain that to someone while living in Eastern Oregon, while I was teaching a class on something really, really basic. It was basic outdoor survival stuff that I only knew enough about to teach a few things. But I taught them what I knew. That's all. Well, I was in the Marines. Never was in the military, by the way. He never was. I was a Navy SEAL. Obviously, no, he wasn't. I've been hunting and fishing. Blah. Everything he said was literally a lie. And I immediately pointed out, because I know this guy's never been in the military and he just lied to you, I want you to learn from him as a negative lesson. Now, this is what you will do now. You will get to know your neighbors. You will go up and down your road each way, if it's a corner, but only a corner, each way, 1 mile. And you will communicate with them. And you will say, hello, my name is such and such. If you're in a small town, that works great. If you're in a big city, 1 block each direction, bare minimum. And you will then observe the pathways that never get filled up with anybody and figure out how to leave the area for an evacuation. And you will look for the high ground for flood or whatever, and low ground for everything else. Pathways that are easiest, that have multiple exits. And most important, beyond having an escape plan or a stay-at-home plan is your best. Because of that, you will make sure your neighbors are prepared and are not panicking, because they're your worst enemy if shit hits the fan, and they're your greatest asset. Again, the fewer people running around panicked who don't know what they're doing, the better off everybody is. It is in your best interest in a civilization to make sure that civilization is well prepared and is resilient as hell. And we have experienced one of the 8 or 9 hardcore scenarios. And you just saw what happened. And I don't care what your political or ideological bent is. Don't tell anybody what you want to do for an evaluation of it, because you'll lie to yourself and everybody in the room, because that's a way of coping. It's self-soothing. That doesn't work when the house is burning down. You just got out of the burning house, figure out how it started, and who kept fanning the flames, and who kept trying to put them out. And be honest in your head and heart. Don't tell anybody, because nobody's ever honest when they're trying to prove something. Thanks for watching. Good day. Good luck with that.